Before anyone gets excited, this video isn't about a GW release for Underworlds fighters. As of this video, we're still waiting. In the meantime, I'm going to talk about how to get beautiful models like these onto the table for a game of Warcry. I'll be looking at two different approaches. The first is to build the profiles from the ground up. We can look at existing models to get an idea of what's appropriate, but ultimately we're making the profile the way we think it should work. The second approach is to go through the compendium and work out an existing profile we could use. This will require some compromises, but it will be tournament legal, with approval from the TO for proxies of course. The warband we're looking at today is Hexbane's Hunters. This is a group of witch hunters led by Haskel Hexbane, sporting the classic look with the hat and everything. Brydget Axwold packing a pistol and two hand axes. There's Aemos Duncarrow, a massive man with a giant two-handed axe, and the mysterious quiet Pock, who wields an explosive crossbow and leads two hounds, Grotbiter and Ratspike. In our Understanding Fighters video, we had a look at some of the averages and what to expect. We'll be using this as a bit of a baseline for profiles we put together. The typical move for a fighter is 4, with points getting reduced if the fighter goes to the slow 3 and increased if the fighter is faster. Usually elves are around 5 move, while mounted fighters are 8, 10 or 12 move. Toughness is usually 4, although for humans they're typically 3 toughness if they don't have a shield. Wounds follow a nice linear relationship to points. I don't know whether designers work out the points or the wounds first, but we'll be looking at the wounds first, and then looking at baseline points from there. We can then make adjustments as needed. The last aspect we have here is the average damage against toughness 4. In the Understanding Fighters video, I suggested looking for 1 damage for every 25 points, but that was an extremely aggressive profile on the basis that we'd be looking for the cream of the crop. Looking at the averages, I think 1 damage per 40 points is probably reasonable. The first model we'll be looking at is Haskel Hexbane. In Underworlds, the warband has a reaction after a fighter takes damage, which will give nearby units a boost. Either an upgrade from hand without spending glory, or removing a moved or charged token, which will allow the unit to move again. So in this case, I'm going to suggest adding a reaction after you take damage to allow a nearby fighter to take a free move action. It's trading a single action for a single action, so it's not action efficiency, but it will let the warband sacrifice one fighter to get another into position, which feels quite thematic. We won't be letting the puppies use them though, so let's make sure it's not usable by beasts. Haskel is human, so we'll give him 4 move and 3 toughness. We should probably have less wounds than a Stormcast, who are supposed to be superhumans. If we take a quick peek at the Stormcast, we can see the Vindicator, the battle line troop, is 20 wounds, so let's try keep fighters under that. Let's start Haskel at 18 wounds. For rune marks, he gets the leader rune mark, and if we look through the various options, Champion or Destroyer would seem to work well thematically for him. So we'll pick Destroyer, since the Champion rune mark is actually very similar to the leader one. For 18 wounds, we're talking about 150 points. Now, we can adjust that up or down as we add in extra features. For weapons, Haskel is armed with 2 large pistols and a bundle of stakes. So we'd like to give him a short range attack along with a melee. Looking for reference, I can see that the company captain from the Caradron Overlords does have a pistol. It's range 8, 3 attack dice, 3 strength, 1 damage and 3 crit. That's the same for the cities of Sigmar Free Guild Pistolier, so it seems to be something GW have decided is a pistol statline. Since Haskel has 2, I'm going to suggest increasing the attack dice by 1, which seems to be the normal approach for double weapons. Working out the numbers, the T4 damage for this is 2.6, which is quite decent for a range attack. If he doesn't move and attacks twice, that's 5 damage, which is really good. I also want to give him a melee attack. In addition to the 2 pistols, he's also got a hammer and a chunk of stakes. For this one, I've gone through a few revisions and struggled to really find something. In the end, I went for a basic melee attack and a special ability to reflect the staking. With 3 attack dice, 4 strength, 2/4 damage, the average damage is going to be 4, so a move and melee action will be worse than a double ranged action. I'm also going to add in an ability called Making a Point. Credit for that particular point goes to the Underworlds card designers. It's a double, so relatively easy to use, and we roll a single die with 2 to 5 doing 2 damage and 6 doing the value of the ability, hopefully a 6. That will get past the vampire's high toughness and their reaction, which only triggers on a melee attack. We'll tag this to the Destroyer rune mark, and we'll make sure any of the fighters with stakes get it too. To reflect him being a leader, we'll give him a trip ability, You Stand Accused. Target an enemy fighter within 8 inches. For the remainder of the turn, all visible fighters gain +1 attack dice against that enemy fighter. So Haskel can point out a target, and the rest of the team can go to town. I've worded it as visible friendly fighters, so he doesn't benefit from it himself. I think this makes for an interesting fighter. Haskel is primarily a ranged fighter with a support ability, but also has a slightly better melee damage and an ability that can only be used in melee. Now we have an idea of what we'd like the profile to look like, we can go through the existing profiles and see if there is something that would match. That means looking through the compendium until you find what you like, or take a spreadsheet and filter to try get down to something close to what you want. Here we have 4 different profiles that are kind of similar to what we're looking for. We definitely need a good range attack. We should have 4 move, 3 to 4 toughness, wounds around 18, and the leader rune mark. The Changecaster is probably the closest to what I'm looking for, so we could make this a Siege Demon Warband. Quick glance through that list, however, shows me that everything is a ranged fighter, which isn't really what we're going for. We could make him a Bolt Boy boss and have the Warband as Cruel Boys. The dogs will be Stabgrots, a little slow at 4 move, but still quite cheap. The other ranged fighters can be a Hobgrot Slida or the Manskewer Bolt Boys. Big guy could be one of the killer bosses. All that could definitely work. If we go with the Necromancer, we're into the Soulblight Grave Lords faction, which has lots of options. The dogs become Vrykos Bloodborne, 8 move. Aemos becomes a Kasargi Night Guard, chunky and with reach and good damage. But we are a little limited on the range options for Brydget and Quiet Pock, with only the Necromancer. So while we could definitely make this work, I think we're going to go with the Battle Mage. He's not quite perfect for a Witch Hunter, but he ticks most of the boxes, and the Cities of Sigmar Warband is big enough to have a lot of the options. So here we have Haskel Hexbane using the Battle Mage profile. We'll be using the normal abilities from the existing Warband, but we can adjust the names to get the flavor we're looking for. Next up we have Brydget Axwold, another human, so we can expect 4 move and 3 toughness. I'll ballpark her at 12 wounds, that will work out to about 100 points. She does have a very cool ability that lets her improve her range attack for 1 shot, but only if they're right next to her. It's a pretty cool idea, but I don't want to get bogged down with abilities. We've already got 3, so I'm just going to give her the Destroy rune mark for making a point, and we'll leave it there. For her volley pistol, it's just a 1, we'll give her the normal range 8, 3 attack dice, 3 strength, 1 damage, 3 crit profile. She does have 2 axes, so let's go find an axe profile. The Pit Veteran from the Spire Tyrants has a dual weapons profile, which is 4 dice, 4 strength, 2 hit damage, 4 crits. That averages out to 5.3, which is probably a little high for 100 points. We can bring it down to 3 strength to try to adjust it, and it turns out we've just made the company captain profile from the Arcanauts, but with +1 move for 10 more points. So let's up her points slightly to adjust for that. Now she's 120 points, and we'll just leave that there for the stats. Since we've settled on the Cities of Sigmar faction, our choices are constrained, but luckily the Cities of Sigmar has lots of profiles. I want a range attack and a decent melee attack. I'd also preferably not have the hero trait. The elves open up a few options here, and it could be quite interesting making it a little bit faster, but I also like the idea of having a better melee stat line. In the end, I picked the Sister of the Watch. Although the Black Ark Corsair's slightly shorter range was tempting, I still wanted a little bit more punch out of her, so the better damage won me over the end. Again, this might be a case where I go back and reevaluate after some games played. If this pistol shooting further than the other pistols feels wrong, then we can adjust it to the other profile. The big guy is Aemos Duncarrow. I suspect he is the woodsman out of the Red Riding Hood legend. I am going to give him the brute rune mark along with the destroyer one, just because it feels right. Although he's human, since he's so big, I'd like to make him 4 toughness. That's not too much for reach, since 4 is basically the average for Warcry fighters. I'd like to have him chunky too, so maybe 18 wounds as well. No range attack this time, just solid melee attack. Let's say 4 dice, 4 strength, 2 hit, 2 crit. It's a pretty typical damage profile. The average damage against T4 is 5.33. A good example of this is the Untamed Beast Prey Taker or the Iron Golem Signifier. The Signifier is actually perfect as it has 18 wounds already, so let's just steal that stat line. This isn't a super scary model, just a solid tough one. Trying to mirror that in the Cities of Sigmar is tricky. The average rank and file fighters aren't that chunky, typically around 10 wounds, so despite our best efforts, we're going to have to make Aemos a hero. That gives us a few options to play with. The Free Guild General is probably the better option, especially as he has the destroyer abilities from the City of Sigmar, which do work quite well for this. But I'm actually going to go with the Warden King instead. Almost the same, but with more wounds and tougher in exchange for movement 3. So he'll be a little bit lumbering. Again, this might be a case where we play with one profile to try it out, and then decide to switch over. Quiet Pock, again, is another range fighter, but this time it's explosive. Let's start him out the same way as we did Brydget, 12 wounds, 4 move, and 3 toughness. He only has a dagger for his melee, so the punch is really going to be with a ranged weapon. He has a crossbow that fires bolts with grenades on them. I figure a high strength 5 is probably good for killing vampires. The 2/4 damage profile is great. Let's say 3 dice and 12 range and see what it looks like. Closest comparison here is the Castigator, which seems apt as they have explosive tipped crossbows also. They have 15 range, so 12 is a little weaker. They are 210 points though, so maybe we reduce the damage slightly. Changing that to a 1/4 brings damage down to 3.5. Unlike the others, he doesn't have any stakes, so no destroyer rune mark for him. With a minimum range of 3, we do need to give him some melee weapon, so we'll give him the typical profile for a dagger as backup, but he really wants to stay at ranged. As with Aemos, we're pushing to making this guy a hero, and he'll be our last hero option if we want to keep the Warband match play legal. I picked out a few profiles here from the Cities of Sigmar, but it's worth also pointing out that these could be from any of the other Order Warbands. There are some options, the Lumineth Warband for example, that could fit the bill. Or we could have the armor he's wearing weigh him down, reducing his movement to 3, and use one of the Caradron Overlord heroes. We're only going to have the 2 options for heroes outside the Warband, so it's something we should use sparingly, but it does open up a lot of extra options, which is good. In this case, I went for the marksman with handgun, mostly because it means I don't have to add extra abilities. The last 2 fighters are the 2 hounds, who will be the same. The easy option is to make them the same as the Chaos Warhound or the Direwolves. Fast at 8 speed, normal attack dagger profile, only 3 toughness, and a reasonable 10 wounds. They're fast in, but often die fast. The Chaos and Death Trolls do have a reaction and special abilities, but this custom warband already has a reaction, so I don't want to add too much extra. This does underpower the dogs a little, but this is the sort of thing that some extra play will help with. Maybe they're fine as is, and maybe they'll need a little extra tweak down the line. Picking a proxy profile for them is tricky. There is no dog profile in Cities of Sigmar, so we have to pick between either the elves at 5 speed or one of the mounted fighters at 10. Due to the extra rules around mounted troops, I'll favour picking an elf. Here we have 3 potential options. In the end, I went for the cheap and a little bit more damage with the Black Orc Corsair. The Bleak Sword did have the damage profile I was looking for, but with toughness 3 on the dogs, it makes a little more sense to me. And that's it. Here we have the full custom warband with all 6 fighters. I'm sure after a few games I'll be looking to make more tweaks, but right now we're able to get this warband on the table, which is a big step. I've also put together an abilities card. For the Underworld warbands, usually you try fit them into an existing warband. So in this case they're part of the Cities of Sigmar warband and have access to all the normal Cities of Sigmar abilities. Alternatively, you could have them completely independent. Here we have the warband with proxy cards. Each of these is a fighter from the City of the Sigmar Warband, although you will need to add some bodies to get this to a full legal 1000. This is 655 points. Notably, we have used up all the hero slots. This page has all the abilities from the City of Sigmar, at least the ones that the fighters can use. I have used the Tempest's Eye ability list in this case. Each of the names have been changed to make them a little bit more thematic, using names from the cards from the Underworlds box. Warcry is a fantastic game. It's quick to play, and it does a good job of capturing the feel for a fantasy skirmish game. This makes it particularly fun for narrative play, as you're able to bang out a bundle of games quite quickly and don't have to worry too much about balance. It's possible to have some very unbalanced campaign games, either because one warband is better developed or because the random scenario is skewed in some way. As the game plays quick, and the warband that loses still gets glory and artifacts, that's actually okay. This makes it perfect for custom games using unofficial profiles. This lets us focus on the particular setting. When the original game came out, it was very thematic, focused on the Chaos Warbands, and the current season is doing similar with the Norwood Forest. When we're putting together a two-player game, we can really get stuck in with some fun theme. I painted this warband with the same basing style as my Cursed City box, with the goal of using them along with the Cursed City heroes in a Witch Hunter vs Undead campaign. My next step is to look at the scenery options and see what I need to do to make a decent city board. If you have an Underworlds warband, or maybe some custom models that you'd just like to play, I definitely recommend working out some profiles yourself. Maybe use some existing profiles as a starting point and tweak them to suit. Similarly, rather than coming up with abilities from scratch, take some of the existing ones and just reskin them to suit your needs. The Warcry system really does make for a great game, and it is absolutely worth the effort. Thanks for making it all the way to the end. Hopefully you enjoyed this video. Each week I put up a new video talking about one of Games Workshop's specialist games. The goal is always to try and make the best possible two-player experience. If this is something you'd find interesting, please subscribe to the channel and comment to let me know what you'd like to see in future.